Good afternoon. Welcome back to my channel. I am here in York County, Pennsylvania, and I am revisiting a location. It is one of my favorite waterfalls in the area. It is about, I say I'm about an hour and 15 minutes from where I live. And I've come back to this location to sort of kick off the season for waterfall photography. It is March 1st, so we're at the tail end of the winter, and I thought I would take the occasion in this video to talk to you about some tips that I have learned that has really upped my game in waterfall photography. So let's go ahead and get started. The first tip, wading boots. Now, when I first was starting to take photographs of waterfalls, I would just sort of stand on the rocks, and oftentimes I couldn't get a good perspective, or not as good as a perspective as I have recently by wearing these boots. Now, whether you use wading boots like this, or you have wellies or hip waders, whatever the case might be, the point is being able to get out in front of the waterfall and into the water. And since I've been able to wear these, I've been able to take better perspectives of the waterfall. But not only do I have these wading boots, but I also have these, what are called NRS Boundry Socks. These are neoprene socks that I put on first. And this is just a matter of, just like any wetsuit that you put on. It's just sort of the same thing that would do, keeping you warm if the water's a little bit cooler, keeping your feet pretty much dry. So tip number one is buy some boundary socks or wellies, hip waders, whatever the case might be, so you can get out in the water. Of course, if the water is shallow enough and safe enough to really get into a perspective in front of the waterfall. So I'm going to go ahead and put my boots on and my boundary socks on, and we'll get going here in just a moment. All right, now that I've got my boundary socks on, let's go ahead and start the hike to the waterfall. Well, I'm down here by the waterfall, and it's a little bit of a sketchy climb down, because notice, look at that. I had to sort of sit down for part of the time. But that's one of the things about this particular waterfall, is it's in this little gorge here. But once you get down here, it is beautiful. So now I'm going to go to the next tip. The second tip is slow down. Now, that might seem obvious, but in the past I've had the habit of getting to a location or getting to the waterfall and getting my camera out and putting it on the tripod and not even taking the time to really search around and to look for compositions. And when I look back at some of my older waterfall photographs, I can see where they were a little bit haphazard, and how I could have really improved them by just slowing down and looking. The third tip is perspective. Now, it used to be when I was taking photographs of waterfalls that I would just be in this position here. And you can get pretty photographs of waterfalls this way, but they're run-of-the-mill. So, for example, I have my tripod at basically chest level. I'm looking at the waterfall straight on. But if you want to separate yourselves, you need to take a different perspective. And the way to do that is to get low. Put your tripod down near the ground. So let's take a look at what happens to this photograph when you lower the tripod down. Now look at that difference. I have my tripod down way low, and notice the current. Now we can use the current as a leading line to the waterfall. In my opinion, this really is a much more creative and better photograph than just looking at the waterfall straight on. Just this tip alone can really up your game when it comes to waterfall photography. Tip number 4, use a polarizer. Well, what is a polarizer? Well, if you'll look here, it is a filter, and it is comprised of 2 rings. Now, this outside ring you will twist, and what it'll do, it will filter out certain bands of light. All right, so let me give you an example of what I mean by the polarizer removing the specular highlights and changing the color of the greens, making them more saturated. Now right now I don't have the polarizer engaged, and by twisting the polarizer, notice very slowly as I'm turning it, that reflection and the glare of the waterfall begins to disappear. And notice what happens to the green as well. The green changes. As I keep turning, notice that the reflection is coming back. Now the effect is not going to be as great because of how late it is, and it's a little bit dark down here. Now you can make good photographs without a polarizer, but one of the things here is that you can't duplicate this effect in post-processing. So this is a good tip to have. It will really heighten and improve your waterfall photography. Well, I hope those tips have been helpful to you. I know that when I learned these, my waterfall photography really grew and improved. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And please consider subscribing and click that bell notification icon. Well, thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to another photography journey that I can share with you. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue to take some photographs here, and I'll show them to you at the end. Thank you, and bye. I've got to climb back up that.